Hi, everybody. I hope you're excited as I am for this next panel. As she was introducing, we're going to talk about food waste. I know that someone before over here had a question about this topic, so now we're going to dive into that. I'm going to moderate in that. I'm Chiara Cecchini, and I'm the U.S. Director of Future Food Institute. We are a non-profit working in food and education, and now we have a consultancy company working on supporting food companies in designing new solutions. And with me, we have Dara Gunders, which is one of the leading national experts in food waste, and she's going to just share a little bit more about her work. And also Jasmine Crowe, which is the founder of Goodr. So why don't we just start from your work, and how did you get into the food waste world?
Sure, I can start. I got into this world while working on a project in the fruit and vegetable industry that was looking at a variety of environmental components, and I was kind of put in charge of the waste topic, mostly looking at kind of plastics and like physical farm waste. But I started stumbling around upon these numbers about how much food gets wasted and all of the resources that go into it, and I felt like, oh my gosh, why is nobody talking about this? Like, everyone should be talking about it. It can't be real, or else everyone would be. And that led me to write a report that ultimately was kind of one of the reports that sparked a big dialogue on this topic back in 2012. And since then, I led a whole program at a nonprofit on this issue called the Natural Resources Defense Council for many years. While there, I wrote a book called The Waste-Free Kitchen Handbook. I testified in Congress on the issue. I worked with a lot of companies. But I left in January and have been advising companies and doing trainings and workshops since then.
Hi, just was making sure the mic goes on. My name is Jasmine Crowe. I'm founder and CEO of Goodr. We're based in Atlanta, Georgia. And my, journey into the food waste space was very organic. It actually happened after I had been serving members of our homeless community on the streets of Atlanta for about 3.5 years. I was hosting what I called the Sunday Soul pop-up restaurants, and I would rent tables and chairs and linens and actually print out menus and let members of our homeless community sit down, and the idea was to let them dine with dignity and feel like they were having this restaurant experience. And so a video from one of those events went viral on Facebook, and thousands of people were like, this is so amazing, which restaurants donate the food? And the reality was none. I was couponing, price matching, going to 5 to 6 different grocery stores and farmers markets and paying for this food out of my pocket and actually cooking it in my kitchen. And so that whole process would be about 40 hours for me to feed about 500 people every 2 weeks. And I started thinking there has to be a better way to do this. Why am I expending all of my resources and time to feed these vulnerable populations? And there's obviously food that's going to waste, to your point. And as I researched food waste, I too was really blown away with it and just couldn't believe it, and decided I wanted to create a solution to get food to people in need.
Great, inspiring. Here we have different organizations. So we are organization working on the tech space, appliances, food services, restaurants. Everybody have in common the final user. And so I would like to start from householders. So why are people wasting, and what's happening in houses, in homes, in the kitchens, in terms of food waste?
Sure. Well, I will say that we're still trying to get a handle on this, right? And in some ways, everyone manages their food so differently that it is a different situation in different homes. Some of the studies that have been done show that about 2/3 of the food in households is actually edible. We waste about 2.5 pounds of edible food per week per person in this country, and another pound of inedibles, so bones and peels and things like that, per person. Generally speaking, it's the top 2 categories of food that go to waste are fruits and vegetables, and then prepared foods and leftovers. And the top 2 reasons that people give for wasting food are that they're moldy and that it's moldy and spoiled, or that they're leftovers they didn't want to eat. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a character. I think if you kind of step back and look at more of the behavioral stuff around it, we're in a situation where people, they want things that are convenient, that don't take a lot of time, but they also want choice. And so you often have, I know one researcher who did a study where she asked people if they had some eggs and they brought them home and they dropped the whole dozen of eggs before they put them in the refrigerator, like how would they feel? And they, felt kind of bummed, and they felt like they wasted the money. And then she asked, well, if you put them in your refrigerator but you didn't eat them and 4 weeks later you took them out and threw them away, how would that make you feel? And they felt on the scale much less bad about that. And so there's something about sort of having the choice and not taking it that we're sort of exercising that choice with food, and oftentimes that's leading it to go to waste. I'll just say one more thing because I think it's fascinating, and that is a couple more things, if you don't mind, just to characterize it. One is that people don't know they waste food. So several surveys have shown that 75% of Americans say they waste less than the average American. It's one of my favorite statistics. They also are often wasted, and part of that is that they don't see it because it's a byproduct of something else that they're doing that they feel really good about. So oftentimes, people waste food when they're hosting parties, when they're trying new foods, when they're trying to eat healthier, and when they're trying to feed their kids healthier. And so all of those things are great, and the byproduct is you just waste food, and that happens. So we can go into more kind of behavioral stuff, but that gives you a taste.
I think she really hit a lot of the reasons. The only other reason that I would add is a lot around labeling. To give you guys an example, I'm a really big fan of almond milk, and I used to love it because it lasted a long time. And about 3 weeks ago, I noticed that now my almond milk said, you have to throw it away after 7 days. And I was like, it never used to say that. I mean, that was my whole reason for really enjoying almond milk, is that I thought I could use it longer. And so I think a lot of times these labels that are intentionally designed to get us to go back and spend more money and buy products faster cause a lot of people to waste in the household. I have, been a big tester of it, of smelling things first, like bread, if it's not hard and it's still soft, if I could eat it, I'm really going to still work with it. But I think a lot of people don't even test it out if the label says, sell by or use by this date, they're just throwing it away. I think there's also a lot of confusion around what sell by means and what use by means. A lot of people will see that sell by date and just think it's bad. Essentially, it's not. So I think that that's one of the other reasons why I see a lot of waste happening in the households.
Great. You actually touch a point that I had in mind, which is the role of packaging. And so, since we mentioned that, how do you think packaging could improve and create potential solutions for this problem?
I think there's a lot happening right now around labeling, and I think just having those conversations. I actually personally wrote to Silk Almond Milk when I saw that they had added, throw it away after 7 days after opening. And I explained to them, hey, I've been drinking almond milk for years now. My sister works at Nielsen and actually worked on your whole campaign. And I know you guys just added this within the last week or so, since I've last purchased it. And of course, I got the generic response back from whoever's sitting at Silk and responding to emails from random people like myself. But they said we found that the milk actually does go bad. And I said, actually it doesn't. I've had it for months and years, as I've explained to you. So why did you guys add that on there? So to the extent we can start having more conversations, if we don't talk to the manufacturers about these issues, they're going to just slip that in there. They slip that on this carton. So I think there could be a lot done in talking to the manufacturers at the manufacturer level. As it relates to packaging. I mean, obviously our work is not way more downstream with Goodr, so we're not working heavily in the household. We're trying to figure out ways to get food to the household, but not dealing with food waste in the household in my role.
Yeah, I would just add, I think there are several layers of opportunities when it comes to packaging. If you think about the fundamental reason for packaging, it's to transport food, get it somewhere safely, and preserve it as long as possible, right? So there's There's everything from adjusting package sizes. I've seen a great example recently. I've noticed a lot of crackers within the box are actually packaging separately, so that once you open the cracker, you don't have to eat the entire box within a certain amount of time, and that doesn't take a lot of extra packaging, but it actually can really preserve the use. There's a lot that can be done with just information providing to consumers. And then there's sort of this whole other very innovative level of packaging that's going on, where there's you can have things that absorb ethylene or other aspects. I think one of the pitches today, had something that absorbs moisture in a way that preserves life. So there's preservation. And then there are things like time temperature indicators or sensors that are coming out and looking at how long has this product actually been out, so that someday we can not even have dates on food, but actually specific to the product, like how much time has this been exposed and what does that mean for how fresh it is or its quality.
Great. And so in terms of solutions, I know that many of your clients are actually in the corporate world, and we're talking about restaurants, we're talking about food services. So which are the main opportunities in this specific space to improve and to solve this food waste problem?
In this specific space?
Of food services and kitchens, commercial kitchens.
Commercial kitchens. Do you want to take that first? Well, I think when you look at food service in general, you have front of house and back of house, and they're somewhat different character of a problem, right? So in the back of house, you have overproduction. In the kitchen, it's a place where that's much more tightly controlled than what you're dealing with consumers in the front of house. And typically, most restaurants have a lot more waste in front of house than they do in back of house. So back of house, it's about tracking kind of what's being produced, what's not getting used. It's about storing product well. It's about good inventory management. Front of house, I think it's actually really untouched territory, and the big problem is that people like big portions in this country. A little quiz for you all: how much has the average cookie increased in size since the 1980s? Raise your hand. Not enough. The average cookie has quadrupled in calories since the 1980s. And the average chicken Caesar salad has doubled, right? And it's sort of so in food service, you have really big portions that are served. Some people like that; they feel like they're getting value, but not everyone eats it, and a lot of that food goes to waste.
I think a lot of the platform that we've built at Goodr is helping businesses to solve it. Now, we work with really high volume businesses, so our customers are like airports, convention centers. We like to focus on a lot of food in one location, so we're not down to serving individual restaurants, but we service all the restaurants in the Atlanta airport and then all of the Sky Clubs. So we have over like 200 restaurants in one location, and we're giving them a lot of data analytics. So we were able to actually tell Chick-fil-A, for example, that no one likes the chicken Caesar salad wrap going off of your chicken Caesar. So they didn't know that. And so what they were able to do then is then have their cashiers actually suggest it and talk about it, because a lot of people are going to order a chicken sandwich, because that's what they're famous for, or the nuggets or the strips. But if they're not talking about the other items that they have on the menu, people never even think to order them, and they're mass producing them under the assumption that someone will want it. So being able to tell them that kind of data. The other thing is we have to really lose the fear in the fight against hunger is what we're really kind of getting these restaurants on board with. So many people are like, oh, we're going to get sued. There's liability. There's all these different things, which is why we're using blockchain and our technology to actually show these businesses how we're tracking the food and sensors to show that we're not only delivering it to these communities that we're saying we are delivering it to, but also that it's arriving there safely. We just have so many people that are still wasting food that they're mass producing, and we see that a lot in larger restaurants. I won't name a few of them just because they're like really big names that we've been talking to, but we get so many emails from like those servers at those restaurants that are like, we throw away like 5 pans of lasagna every night. We throw away this every single night. They let the staff have some of it, and then they just throw it away. So when we see those messages come in, ultimately we go and we talk to these businesses, a lot of the big guys, and they're like, yeah, we just can't do it because if someone gets sick, we're going to get in trouble. And so to the extent that we offer, $12 million of insurance, of liability insurance, we indemnify these customers. We have agreements in place with all the nonprofits that receive food. We still have people that are very afraid about donating food, and so their resolve is actually still to waste it. And until we change that perception, we're going to have a huge problem with really reducing waste, because they're continuously making the same amount of food every night. The volume of what they're throwing away isn't going down because they're constantly preparing. These are anchor restaurants at like malls where you never know how many people are coming, and you have to be prepared or your kitchen's going to crash. So until we lose that fear, I think that that's the number one thing we have to do with these restaurants right now.
Great. So we're a little bit tight on time. I have a few other questions, but before that, if someone wanna have the opportunity to just ask something, that's the moment. Okay.
Well, I just want to add, because I don't think we've really touched on solutions in home kitchens yet, and I think there's probably a lot of people at this conference who are interested in that particular topic. And I've been really excited in the couple hours I've been here so far to see things like these sort of connected, plan, cook, prep, plan, store, prep, cook kind of helpers out there. And I'm seeing a lot of focus on kind of the recipe and the cooking. I'm seeing, I think there's still some opportunities that I haven't seen, and I haven't seen everything that's here yet by any means, but around, if you go to a food conference, all you hear about is food safety, right, and fear and liability, and I think there's some big opportunity areas in sort of assuring people that their food is safe, or maybe not assuring for legal reasons, but helping them feel better about that, more so than just the date label. So things like pathogen testing and temperature records and things like that can sort of get summed up into one nice green or blue dot that tells you something. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think there's a lot of sort of, again, there's almost in a home kitchen, there's back of house and front of house. I think in the back of house, you have food storage, refrigerators. I think it's not important. It is important that they're smart, but it's also important that refrigerators and some of these other appliances are capable, right, and can do things in addition to just have information. So, could the refrigerator of the future actually store food at more than 2 different temperatures? Could it actually modify atmospheres so that there's, not as much oxygen or moisture in it? Could it actually have data that gets fed back up the supply chain so that further, the farmers and the stores are actually better able to produce to what is actually in demand, things like that. And then I think there's front of house kind of stuff in the household, in kitchens around plateware, the size of plateware, the information you're getting. Right now, like you go to serve yourself a bowl of pasta and there's no guide to help you know, is it the right amount and how much nutrition are you getting? So I think there's actually a lot you can do with some of the more common sort of plateware and cooking utensils as well.
Great, thank you for adding that. We have a question. Do we have time for a question? One, okay.
I don't know about it in the home. One of the things that we're doing, and we're kind of faced with the challenge, we have access to anaerobic digesters where we can actually turn food waste into electricity and actually sell it back to the power companies. The issue is that a lot of them require about 150 tons of food waste to actually get it working properly, so we need to source a lot of food waste before we actually can use one. I think that's one. We've also seen a lot of animal feed, food waste going to like animal feed and being turned into other products. We work with a company called Grubbly Farms in Atlanta that turns it into like a pet larva, and their focus right now is chicken coops. So they feed people that keep pet chickens, which I didn't know that was a really big thing until I met with them. There's people that keep pet chickens, and they create this larva for them that comes out of like wet lettuce. And so we source to them a lot of wet lettuce that kind of goes bad from salad bars. And so there are a lot of other use cases for it, and we really researched that. One thing, just in the home, there was not composting where I lived. And what I started doing was just using my garbage disposal again. And I think a lot of people forget about that. Like, you just use it the one time when you're washing dishes and there's, food in your sink. But it actually can work for you to really reduce your overall food waste if you use it like on a sparingly basis. And I think, I've reduced food waste in my house to basically zero by doing a lot of changing of habits as well, not buying massive amount of groceries in one trip, but going to the grocery store for meals and kind of making sure I have what I want for dinner, what I'm going to have for breakfast, so that I'm kind of a living testament to being a food hero, if you will, and not reducing food waste. But I think that's one thing that we could do in the household that I think is forgotten about.
And just direct to the Whirlpool. I don't know if anyone here is from Whirlpool Labs, but they came out with a product called Zira that is like a home composting machine. If you have something to do with all the compost that comes out of it.
Great. So thank you, Tana and Jasmine, and thank you very much for being with us.